The first sound wasn't the slap, it was the silence that came right before it. The kind of silence that crawls up your spine and freezes everything in you for one suspended second before reality crashes back down. The hallway smelled faintly of wet shoes and floor wax, lockers lined in endless rows reflecting the flicker of cheap fluorescent lights. And there, in the middle of it all, stood Emma Collins, the quiet girl everyone knew but no one really saw. She was the kind of student teachers called polite, the kind who sat in the back, took notes, smiled faintly when spoken to, and blended into the background so completely that even her presence seemed like an apology. But that day, that single slap changed everything, not just for Emma, but for everyone who thought they could break her spirit without consequence. If you believe that kindness, courage, and second chances still matter in this world, then pause this video for a second, hit like, comment, and subscribe to our channel. Because what happened next will make you think twice about the quiet souls you overlook every day. It had started long before that slap. The bullying wasn't always loud, not at first. Sometimes it was whispers, smirks, notes left on her desk that said things like freak or mute. Sometimes it was her lunch being accidentally knocked to the floor, or her locker mysteriously jammed shut right before the bell. But what made it worse was how ordinary it all seemed to everyone else, how easy it was for people to look away. Emma's classmates laughed nervously, her teachers pretended not to see, and the principal always said, "We'll handle it." But nothing ever got handled. Her tormentors were the same group every time, a handful of loud, popular kids who thrived on control. The ringleader was Jason Holt, the golden boy of Westfield High. Captain of the wrestling team, blue-eyed, charming, and utterly cruel when no one important was watching. He had that kind of face that made adults trust him and made his victims doubt themselves. To him, bullying wasn't violence, it was sport. And Emma, with her quiet voice and shy eyes, was the perfect target. She had learned to hide her bruises behind long sleeves and her tears behind silence. What no one knew was that Emma's quiet wasn't weakness. It was survival. Every insult, every shove, every stolen lunch built a fire in her chest that she didn't know how to release. She told herself it didn't matter, that people like Jason always won, that life wasn't fair. But deep down, she kept count not of the insults, but of the strength it took to keep walking through those hallways when all she wanted to do was disappear. Her mother worked double shifts at the diner downtown. Her father had left when she was 8. Most nights, she came home to an empty apartment, made herself a bowl of instant noodles, and buried herself in books. The walls were thin, the lights flickered, and the only constant sound was the hum of loneliness. But even there, she found small comforts: an old guitar in the corner her father had left behind, the smell of rain through the window, the feel of her mother's tired kiss on her forehead before collapsing into bed. Emma wasn't weak. She was just holding back. Everything changed one rainy Thursday afternoon in November. The day had dragged on, gray and heavy, and the hallways buzzed with restless energy before the final bell. Jason and his friends stood by the lockers, loud and laughing, tossing an apple back and forth. Emma passed quietly, clutching her books, head down as usual. Maybe it was boredom, maybe it was cruelty, but Jason's voice cut through the chatter like a blade. "Hey, nude girl. You ever gonna say something, or you just keep hiding behind your hair?" Laughter echoed. Emma kept walking. Her heart pounded, her face flushed, but she didn't stop. That's when he stepped in front of her, blocking her path. He grinned, that same grin that always preceded humiliation, and said something low, something she would never repeat aloud. Then, with an almost lazy motion, he slapped her across the face. The sound cracked through the hallway. Books slipped from her hands, clattering to the floor. A gasp rippled through the crowd. For a moment, no one moved. Jason smirked, proud of himself. He expected her to cry, to run, to fold like always. But something inside Emma snapped, not in anger, but in finality. She didn't remember thinking. She just moved. Years of buried fear and quiet endurance exploded into one fierce motion. Her hand caught his wrist as he raised it again. She twisted it hard, too hard, and the hallway filled with the sickening pop of bone giving way. Jason screamed, collapsing against the lockers, his arm bent unnaturally. The crowd froze. Someone shouted her name. The teacher's voice boomed down the corridor. But it was too late, the moment was already carved into every witness's memory. Emma stood still, trembling, tears mixing with the sting on her cheek. Her chest rose and fell in sharp breaths, but her eyes were steady, calm in a way that frightened even herself. The teacher rushed over, yelling for the nurse, for security, for everyone to move. Jason writhed on the floor, cursing, but she didn't look at him. She just picked up her books, her hand shaking slightly, and whispered, "I told you to stop." The aftermath was chaos. The story spread like wildfire. Emma Collins broke Jason Holt's arm. Twisting through every hallway, every text thread, every social feed. Half the school called her crazy, the other half called her brave. But the truth was simpler, she was done being afraid. The principal suspended her for 2 weeks pending investigation. Jason's parents threatened legal action. But as the days passed, the noise began to fade, replaced by something Emma had never felt before: respect. Not admiration, not fear, but a quiet kind of respect that came from people who had once looked right through her. A girl from her English class slipped her a note that said, "Thank you for standing up. You did what we all wished we could." Her mother cried when she found out, not from anger, but from heartbreak. Emma had spent years hiding the truth, pretending everything was fine. But that night, sitting across from her mother at the small kitchen table, she finally let it out, all of it. Every insult, every bruise, every time someone laughed. Her mother listened in silence, tears rolling down her face. Then she reached across the table and took her daughter's hand. "You don't ever have to be sorry for defending yourself," she said. "But promise me, you'll never let their cruelty turn you into them." And Emma promised. When she returned to school, something had shifted. The whispers followed her, yes, but there was also space now, literal space around her in the hallways, a quiet acknowledgement that she was no longer invisible. Jason avoided her completely, his arm still in a sling. The principal arranged a mediation session that ended awkwardly when Jason refused to apologize. Emma didn't need him to. She had already moved on. Over time, she joined the self-defense club. Not out of vengeance, but because she wanted to make sure no one else felt powerless again. She became quieter still, but in a different way, a peaceful kind of quiet. When freshmen got picked on, she was the first to step in, not with fists, but with words that carried the weight of experience. "Don't let them define you," she would say. "People only take your power if you hand it to them." Years later, long after high school, she became a youth counselor. She worked with teenagers who'd been bullied, broken, silenced. They saw in her the calm strength they wanted to find in themselves. Sometimes she told her story not to glorify violence, but to remind them that silence doesn't equal weakness, and that courage often grows in the quietest hearts. And every time she walked through a school hallway again, she remembered that moment, the slap, the silence, the sound of bone breaking, not as an act of revenge, but as the moment she finally reclaimed her voice. If this story touched your heart, if you've ever felt invisible, if you've ever stood alone and still refused to break, please take a moment right now to like this video, share it with someone who needs courage today, and subscribe to our channel for more stories that remind the world, kindness is strength, and silence is not surrender. Before we end, we have one special request. Comment below and tell us, have you ever witnessed or faced bullying, and what did it teach you about yourself? Your story might be the reason someone else finds their courage today. Emma's story isn't about a fight in a hallway. It's about how much a human soul can endure before it decides to stop surviving and start living. She didn't become stronger because she hurt someone. She became stronger because, for the first time, she refused to be broken. And that, in the end, is what true power really looks like.